Sometimes, to rebuild, you have to break what once seemed untouchable. This sentence echoes to the halls of Scotiabank Arena as Toronto faces one of the toughest decisions of its modern era. Mitch Marner, a hometown kid and the beating heart of the franchise, may be about to say goodbye. And the most shocking part? It might not just be inevitable, it might be the best move for everyone involved. With free agency approaching and the very real possibility of losing their top scorer from last season for nothing in return, the Maple Leafs have to act, and fast. The free agent market is thin, filled with names that come nowhere near Marner's impact, and sticking with the status quo, clinging to a core that has repeatedly shown its limits, feels more and more like a dead end. That's where a new path emerges, the path of a trade. And while no deal will truly replace Mitch Marner, there are names on the market that could reshape the roster in unexpected ways, and even open the door to a new kind of Leafs team, one that's more balanced, grittier, and built for what really matters, the playoffs. In this video, you'll discover 4 potential trades that could redefine not just a roster, but the very identity of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And by the end, the question will still echo: are you ready to say goodbye to Mitch Marner in the name of the Stanley Cup? If you're a true Leafs fan, stay with us until the end. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment which of these trades would you go for, and which one would you never even consider. Let's begin, because the Leafs' future might be just one decision away. Trade number 4, Jack Eichel. What the price of finally winning that long-dreamed-of Stanley Cup is losing Mitch Marner? That's the question echoing behind the scenes at Scotiabank Arena. Amid the calculated silence from the Leafs front office, the rumors are heating up again, and this time, they involve not just one of the most talented players of his generation, but a trade that could completely change the franchise's trajectory. And on the other side of this possible deal is none other than the reigning champion, the Vegas Golden Knights. The story of the Toronto Maple Leafs is both glorious and painful. Decades without lifting the cup, playoff heartbreaks, halted rebuilds, and the way of a fan base that never gave up. Marner, the hometown boy, has always been a symbol of hope. Drafted in 2015, he grew into one of the faces of the franchise. But in Toronto, talent isn't enough anymore. You have to win. And now, with his contract nearing its end, the window to trade Marner for something truly transformative may be closing. According to sources close to both teams, while names like William Karlsson and Shea Theodore have come up in early discussions, a bolder proposal is starting to gain traction: Jack Eichel for Mitch Marner. At first glance, it seems like an overreach. No major outlet has confirmed the possibility. But quietly, there are those who believe Eichel might be the one piece capable of unlocking this puzzle. On one side, Marner, 94 points last season, consistency, creativity, and the weight of being a locker room leader. On the other, Eichel, a true center with star pedigree and, more importantly, a real track record of playoff impact. He scored 43 points in 40 career postseason games and played a crucial role in Vegas's 2023 championship run. He nearly won the Conn Smythe. Nearly. Behind the scenes, the Leafs are weighing a scenario where Marner is moved, and in return, they get an elite center ready to contribute immediately. With Eichel, Austin Matthews would no longer be the lone dominant center on the ice. The offensive line would gain depth, and the team's DNA would shift instantly. But this isn't a cold business decision. We're talking about trading a local idol for a former rival. And if it backfires, the fans might not forgive it. On the Golden Knights side, the issue is cap space. With Carlson and Hurdle still on the roster, Vegas might be able to afford losing Eichel to make room for Marner. He's younger, flashier, and maybe a better fit for the fast, skill-heavy game Vegas has built since its inception. But the truth is, Eichel is still the heart of that team. And taking out that heart is a major risk. Now, imagine scenarios. If the trade happens, Toronto completely reshapes its core. Eichel joins Matthews and Nylander, turning the attack into a force centered on power and finishing ability. Marner, meanwhile, brings his creativity to a team that knows how to win. The emotional weight would be heavy, but the technical impact might be just what's needed to unlock a championship run. And if the trade doesn't happen, the Leafs risk losing Marner for nothing next offseason. And Vegas might not have the space to keep him if he decides to test the market. A miscalculation now could be costly, but the decision hasn't been made yet. And that's why we want to hear from you. If you're a Leafs fan, would you trade Marner for Jack Eichel today? Or would you rather keep the core intact and give it one more shot? Leave your opinion in the comments. Trade number 3, Jason Robertson. What if I told you that in the midst of another chaotic offseason in Toronto, a quiet glimmer of hope began to take shape? And that hope has a first name, a last name, and blue blood running through the veins of Leafs Nation. Jason Robertson. The name no one expected to hear connected to the Maple Leafs, but one that suddenly starts to make sense. A lot of sense. With the firing of Pete DeBoer and the promise of sweeping changes in Dallas, the Stars front office is beginning to shake up some major pieces. One of them is Robertson. At 25 years old, entering the final year of his contract, the star winger has surprisingly become a valuable trade chip. And among all potential destinations, one stands out not just for the technical fit, but for something deeper. Nicholas Robertson, his younger brother, already wears blue and white. And the idea of reuniting the two in Toronto might just be the kind of story only hockey can write. Jason Robertson isn't just another name. Not long ago, he was a Hart Trophy finalist, with 46 goals and 109 points in the 2022-23 season. And even without replicating those numbers, he's delivered back-to-back 80-point seasons and played all 82 games. He's the opposite of what Toronto is experiencing now. Consistency, durability, and production when it matters most. If the Leafs do lose Mitch Marner, whether by trade or in the near future, few replacements would bring such immediate balance as Jason. He's not the same type of player, not as cerebral as Marner, but he makes up for it with finishing ability, physical presence, and an offensive instinct that fits perfectly alongside Austin Matthews and William Nylander. Behind the scenes, the mood in Dallas is one of transition. With the coach gone and the windows closing for veterans like Jamie Benn and Joe Pavelski, GM Jim Nill has two choices. Go all in on the present or start rebuilding. If they want to win now, maybe Morgan really is a player they're looking for, a high-level, experienced defenseman who could anchor a new defensive system. But if the plan is to build for the future, the conversation changes. And that's where a painful name comes into play. Easton Cowan, the prospect sensation who dominated the OHL with leadership and grit. Trading him now would be a huge gamble, but it might also be the cost of a proven star. And that's where the emotional factor comes in. Picture the Robertson brothers sharing the ice at Scotiabank Arena, one on the top line, the other growing in the bottom six, learning, evolving, fueled by a bond of blood and a shared dream. Would it be good marketing? Absolutely. But it would also be something that pulls at the heart of fan base. Something that unites the team, that gives it identity, that proves the blue and white can truly be home. Let's be realistic, though. Jason Robertson won't come cheap, not in money and not in assets. The Leafs would have to give up something big, and maybe shift their entire philosophy. Can they take on another $8 million contract and still build a deep roster? Is it worth rebuilding the group around Matthews, Nylander, and Robertson? Or would it be better to keep the current core and believe, once again, that they can finally deliver what they've long promised? Time is ticking, and as the rumors heat up, the question lingers in the air. Would you trade Morgan Riley or Easton Cowan to see Jason and Nicholas Robertson together in Toronto? Let us know in the comments. Trade number 2, Martin Necas. He's not Mitch Marner, but maybe he's exactly what the Leafs need right now. Martin Necas, a name that's been gaining traction behind the scenes in Toronto. A name that not long ago seemed out of reach and now emerges as a potential key piece in a quiet yet bold rebuild. If you haven't taken this rumor seriously yet, maybe it's time to start, because Necas isn't just an emerging talent. He might be the bridge between what Toronto is losing and what it still hopes to become. The story is more complex than it seems. Necas didn't want to leave Carolina, and when he did, he was thrown into the whirlwind that was the Mikko Rantanen trade to Colorado Avalanche. It was a strategic move, but also an emotional one. Rantanen wanted out, Carolina gave in, and Necas was part of the equation. But according to sources close to the situation, Necas never fully adapted to the altitude, the system, or the idea of being just a secondary piece on a roster where he believes he could be a star. Enter Toronto, a franchise under pressure, fractured, on the verge of another shakeup, now staring at an irreversible decision. Stick with Mitch Marner until the end and risk losing for nothing, or find a smart exit that refreshes a roster without sacrificing the ability to win now. Necas isn't as cerebral as Marner, nor does he have the same points per game history, but he's fast, explosive, creative, an elite transition forward who can play wing or center, bringing physicality, energy, and a hunger for spotlight. At 26, he's just entering his prime. And unlike some other Leafs targets, he doesn't come with a bloated contract. At least, not yet. But don't be fooled. Even with some possible dissatisfaction in Colorado, Necas won't come cheap. The AVS are still in win-now mode. And to pry him away, the Leafs will have to offer something meaningful. Maybe not Nylander. Maybe not really. But perhaps someone like Matthew Knies. Or worse yet, one of the few future assets the franchise still holds with real value. The question hanging over all this is it worth it? Picture for a moment. Marner is gone to Vegas, Carolina, or somewhere else, and in his place arrives Martin Necas, a player with something to prove, with hunger, with that kind of fire that's often missing when the playoffs come. He joins Matthews and Nylander, forming a reimagined core. Faster, more vertical, more instinct-driven. The team changes. Maybe it loses a bit of control and vision, but it gains urgency, energy, desire, and the locker room feels it. Because as undeniable as Marner's talent is, his long stay in Toronto has come to carry the weight of unmet expectations. Necas offers the opposite. A reset, a shot in the dark that just might be the spark this team so desperately needs. But time is short, and the market is ruthless. Every day, new rumors cross paths, and the right moves must happen before another opportunity vanishes. So the decision is on the table. Should Toronto act now for Martin Necas, or wait too long and end up with no Marner and no real replacement? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Trade number 1, lower caliber star. Not every rebuild needs to start with a bang. Sometimes it's in the silence and the quiet goodbye that a team finally begins to transform. Mitch Marner may be on his way out. And unlike the louder rumors linking his name to Jack Eichel, Jason Robertson, or Martin Necas, a new path is quietly gaining traction behind the scenes. A more discreet path, but perhaps a more realistic one, and maybe even smarter. What if Marner's departure doesn't mean the arrival of a new star, but instead 2 or 3 new pieces that complete an entire team? Tell us in the comments. Would you rather have one big name to replace Marner, or several solid players that elevate the team as a whole? The truth is simple and brutal. There are very few players in the world capable of delivering what Mitch Marner delivers, and even fewer available on the market. That forces Brad Treliving and the Leafs front office to think differently, to get creative, and to reconsider a structure that, for a long time, was treated as untouchable, the so-called Big Four. But now, for the first time in years, that structure is starting to crack. And from the rubble, a new kind of team might be born. With the roughly $11 million Marner would clear off the books, the Leafs could target more than one piece. And that's where things get interesting. A trade bait analysis published by the Hockey Writers highlights a few names as real possibilities. None of them alone would change the course of the franchise, but together, they might just reshape the team's identity. J.J. Peterka, young and fast, would be a perfect fit for a dynamic second line. Marco Rossi, still developing, has pedigree and offensive instincts. Jonathan Marchessault, playoff MVP and Stanley Cup champion in 2023, brings grit and experience, the kind of presence Toronto has often lacked when it matters most. Morgan Geekie and Mason Marchment, meanwhile, are names that offer physicality, versatility, and depth, something the Leafs have historically sacrificed to keep their stars. And if none of those options come through, maybe the answer is already within the organization. Easton Cowan isn't just a future. He's already part of the present. After a magical season in the OHL, many are wondering whether the kid has what it takes to fill, even partially, the void Marner would leave, not as a direct replacement, but as part of a new mosaic that values balance, depth, and team effort. That's the heart of the debate. Instead of finding a new Marner, the Leafs could choose to rebuild their offensive strength as a collective. And maybe, for the first time in years, Toronto stops depending on 4 players to carry the weight of the entire franchise. But this approach comes with risks. The lack of a star could cost the team offensive firepower. It could shake the locker room. It could spark criticism, unfair comparisons, and lingering nostalgia for Marner every time the puck drops in the offensive zone and no one knows quite what to do. That's why Treliving's job demands surgical precision. He can't miss. He can't bring in just anyone. And he has to make sure that the group he assembles is better than the sum of the parts lost. Because as heavy as Marner's contract might be, and as exhausted as this cycle may feel, the question every fan still asks is, what comes next? Maybe that's the real challenge of this offseason. Not finding a new hero, but building a new team. Stronger, more resilient, less dependent, more Leafs. And in this new post-Marner world, the team's identity might finally stop being a promise and become reality. Now I want to hear from you. Would you rather go after a high-impact name, even if it costs more assets, or reinforce the entire team with good but non-star players? Comment down below, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter of the Leafs' full-scale reconfiguration. In the next video, we'll talk about the biggest shadow looming over this offseason, the future of John Tavares. If Marner is gone, does Tavares still have a place on this roster? Or will his contract be the next domino to fall? Toronto is changing, and maybe that's the best gift the future could bring.